Hello everybody and welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and this is the Fiat X19. This is the first car, mid-engine car, which was produced for the masses. Not just that, but this is a car that was never supposed to happen. It is also a car that was made possible by the advent of front drive cars, the very cars that were criticised for making handling stodgy, understeering and boring. And lastly, this was accused of being a hairdresser's car. So, in order to address all those questions, I'm going to take it for a drive. Now this is a really pristine example. It's only got, I think, 4,000 miles on the clock. And it's a real privilege to be able to drive something that is quite as time warp as this is, because you can literally still see on the instrument binnacle there that it's got a sticker which is Regno Unito, which means Great Britain in Italian. So it is that original. This thing is literally just time warp. It is fantastic. Now, I mentioned that this is a car that should have never been made. Why is that? Well, the reason is that Fiat itself, the sort of upper echelons of Fiat, the sort of management of Fiat, didn't actually want to have another small sports car at all. They thought it was something that had passed, that there was not going to be enough volume to justify it. So what happened is that Bertone at the time had just finished making the 850 Spider, I think it was, and they needed some sort of extra capacity for their manufacturing plant. So they decided to make a prototype to try and appeal to Fiat. And they made what was called the Runabout, styled by Marcello Gandini, who also styled the end car. It's a fantastic looking thing which has echoes of the sort of power boats of the time. But tellingly, they didn't, although they used the running gear from the new Fiat 128, they actually said it was based on an Auto Bianchi, and that was a political thing because they knew that upper management in Fiat was so against the idea of producing such a car. Not just that, but Fiat engineers were actually really proud of the fact that the new 124 and 128 series family cars were front drive, because at the time it was actually quite a high-tech innovation to have front drive. It meant more room, it was more modern, it was lighter, etc, etc. So they didn't want to offend. So they essentially made this as being based on the Auto Bianchi, which of course wasn't even true. In the end, Gianni Agnelli, who was running the whole of Fiat, overruled the management and said that the car should go ahead. So it was made, but it was actually quite a close run thing. Also, why am I saying that front drive cars, the sort of scourge of the world, were responsible for this and for many other of the mid-engine sort of lovely mass market things that were produced afterwards? Well, previously, when most cars were rear drive, you had a longitudinal engine, you had a gearbox in line, prop shaft. Now, to put that in a mid-engined car would require quite a lot of re-engineering, whereas once they had the powertrain from the 128 and the 124, all they needed to do was just move the whole assembly back about 5 or 6 feet, and it was perfectly ready to go. So it made the possibility of mass-produced mid-engine cars possible for the first time. Now, some will say that the Porsche 914 was the first mass-produced mid-engine car, and I guess technically you are right. However, it certainly wasn't for the masses. It was expensive. These were cheap. Almost anyone could afford to get one of these. Also, the 914, although I do really like them, the standard 914s have quite a stodgy design. You can imagine at the time, this thing, it really did look like a mini Ferrari, a mini Lamborghini. The design is so much more dramatic than it ever was for the 914. I think one of the key questions that we have to address is this was, at least for a certain period of time, known as a hairdresser's car. Now, I don't know if that term is used elsewhere in the world or in the States, but in the UK, it's kind of referred to as a car that looks like a sports car but doesn't have the substance to back it up. I think that part of that is that the first versions of this, when they came out up until I think the late 70s, they were powered by the 1.3 from the 128 Coupe that only produced 75 horsepower. However, and it was a 4-speed gearbox as well. However, that car did only weigh 860 kilograms, so it wasn't a powerhouse, but I guess it did kind of fit in the overall sort of delicate, elegant design. Lightweight design, sorry, and later cars like this one actually were upgraded with a 1.5 litre engine and a 5-speed gearbox, and they have a little bit more go. Let's see how this one pulls. I'm just going to pull over, go at a junction, and then we'll do a pull through the gears. Something that's really quirky about this and quite interesting is how the revs sort of go opposite to what you're used to. They normally go clockwise. On this, they go anti-clockwise. So it is a little bit cramped in here in the sense that I had to sort of move the armrest, the backrest forward a little bit so I could get it as far back, but I can just about fit. My legs are a little bit scrunched up. But you have the steering wheel in the right place, gear lever in exactly the right place as well. Driving position really has echoes of the original Elan, and I quite like that. And great through these little S's. Feels like it's going to start to understeer slightly, but then the back just moves out a little bit. It's quite a quirky sort of thing. The interior, perfectly nice for the time, I think, actually. I quite like it. It's got that sort of 70s, 80s cool about it. Old Fiat instruments there, so all pretty nice. I love these seats. So one thing I didn't mention is this car was produced from 72 to 86, but it was only produced by Fiat until 1982. After that, Fiat dropped it and decided that they didn't really want to carry on with it. So Bertone obviously thought there was still life left in this little car. So from that point on, they started producing it. So initially, Bertone only made the bodies. They then went to the Lingotto factory at Fiat, who put the cars together. But from 82 onwards, the whole cars were assembled by Bertone. They were badged by Bertone. There was a couple of small differences as well, and it kept on being produced to 86 or 88, I think. By that stage, of course, the MR2 came out and made it a little bit redundant because, sadly, Fiat didn't carry on developing it. Now, something else while we're just turning around is these were actually pretty practical little cars. It had a front and rear boot. Now, the front boot you would use to store this hard top, which I'm not taking off, the Targa top, because I'm worried about sound, but you could store that in there, but there's loads of room in there, and you had another one at the back of the car as well. So it certainly wasn't, apart from the two-seater configuration, the fact it didn't have a huge amount of space inside, it was fairly practical. Right, let's go. First gear, 3,500 revs. Let's go. 6,500. 6,500. And you know, I tell you what, it's not a ball of fire, but wow, that engine is so willing. It's so happy to sort of spin up. And once you get past it's so smooth. And once you get past about 5,000, it gets a little sort of raspy edge to it. So it's great. It's a lot of fun. The ride is great. I mean, I don't know, that tends to be the thing with a lot of these older cars compared to the modern stuff. The ride is just so lovely, you know, on roads like this. It just softens out all the small stuff, so it feels really good. The steering is oh so delicately sensitive. It is lovely. Literally, you can just steer it by by moving it a few centimeters either way off center. It just doesn't require any movement at all. As you go into the corner as well, you can feel weight sort of transferring to the back, and it feels like the whole car kind of wants to pivot round and maybe even break loose, but it doesn't. The gearbox is a little bit vague, but it's the kind of, I've felt this before on Italian cars, a bit of vagueness there, but it's very sweet. It's just the right sort of weight, and it gives you just enough feel as well. That little engine spinning up is just lovely. Really is fantastic. I want to try and get past this horse box, which might be tricky because this doesn't have a huge amount of go. Oh, he's pulling it off. Brilliant. That is an unexpected bonus. Right, we're coming up to Eau Rouge. Perfect timing. Up to 6.5 in second. We're now 5,000 in third. Fantastic little thing. Let's see how it handles these corners, which are really technical. So far on this road, it's just been fantastic. It flows so well, and the body is actually pretty controlled, which is unexpected given how good the ride is. Oh, you just feel your way through it. It's lovely. Really is. Second gear for this hairpin, foot to the floor. Doesn't really seem to have quite enough power to break away there. So you really do have to sort of push the engine to make the most of it. It's an enormous amount of fun, and I love it that you actually have to drive it. It's really, really good. Absolutely. Brakes, a little bit weak, I would say, on the whole. It's so satisfying to just ring that little 1.5 litre. So back to our very last question. Is this a hairdresser's car? Well, I think by the standard of, does it perform like a sports car? Well, I think it does. If what you're expecting from a sports car is driver feel, involvement, and fun, and decent handling, I think it absolutely hits all those margins without a problem. Of course, yeah, in terms of outright performance, if that's what you want, if you want it to be really quick, well, it's never going to be that, but that's really besides the point. It has a delicacy which only the sort of best small engine sports cars can sort of compare. You know, the bigger, quicker stuff just doesn't get that sort of sense of balance and feel in the same way that this does. Oh, that little engine is so willing. It feels like it's alive because it's just like it's just trying so hard. I love it. What a cool thing. Thank you all so much for watching. If you've got anything interesting that you want me to do a review on, then Instagram is the best way. If you want to support the channel, which is really helpful because I'm trying not to have any sort of product placement stuff, then Patreon, I'll put the link in the video description. Thank you all, and thank you to Keith as well for bringing down this fabulous Time Warp X19, which really is a fabulous thing. Look at this interior, look at these seats. It's a lovely, lovely thing. See you soon.